Prince William and Prince Harry were once inseparable, two brothers bound not just by blood but by shared trauma, shared duty, and a shared future inside the world's most famous monarchy. But today, whispers from royal corridors and serious reports from respected commentators suggest something far colder and far more dangerous than emotional distance. A possible financial freeze, a quiet cash war unfolding behind palace walls, one that speaks less about money itself and more about power, legacy, and control of the crown's future. Because money inside the royal family has never been just money, it has always been a language, a tool, a signal of who belongs and who does not. And when Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepped away from royal duties in 2020, they did not just leave behind titles and ceremonies, they stepped outside a tightly controlled financial ecosystem that had governed royal life for generations. An ecosystem Prince William now stands poised to oversee as the future king, and according to multiple royal insiders and analysts, William's approach to money is markedly different from his brother's. Disciplined, institutional, and ruthlessly focused on protecting the monarchy from what he reportedly sees as reputational and financial risk, especially after years of explosive interviews, documentaries, memoirs, and lawsuits that have kept the Sussexes in headlines while repeatedly dragging the royal family into controversy. And this is where the idea of a cash war begins to take shape, not as a dramatic declaration but as a series of quiet decisions, tightened controls, and firm boundaries. Because unlike Harry, William never truly left the system. He stayed, learned it, respected its brutal logic, and now appears determined to run it with an iron grip, particularly when it comes to money flowing out of royal coffers. And sources suggest that William has long believed that financial independence should mean exactly that, independence, not continued reliance on royal structures while simultaneously criticizing them, and this belief reportedly hardened after Harry and Meghan signed multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix, Spotify, and publishers, turning their royal experience into commercial content. Something William is said to view as a dangerous precedent that could cheapen the institution if left unchecked, because once money starts flowing freely without rules, the monarchy risks becoming a brand rather than a state institution. And insiders claim William has privately pushed for stricter separation between working royals and non-working royals, particularly around security funding, allowances, and access to royal resources, a stance that some interpret as punishing Harry, while others see it as protecting the crown. And this is where public sympathy fractures, because from Harry's perspective, the financial squeeze feels personal, a withdrawal of support at a time when he believes he was forced out rather than leaving voluntarily, while from William's side, it reportedly feels necessary, even overdue, a line in the sand drawn not out of anger but out of responsibility, because as heir to the throne, William's primary loyalty is not to his brother but to the institution that will one day rest entirely on his shoulders, an institution already weakened by scandals, public distrust, and generational change. And royal commentators note that William watched his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, rule with emotional restraint and financial discipline, rarely allowing personal relationships to interfere with duty, and those lessons appear deeply ingrained in him, especially after witnessing the chaos of the Sussex departure and its aftermath, which included not only accusations of racism and neglect but also relentless media warfare that left palace staff exhausted and the monarchy constantly on the defensive. And according to reports, William has little patience for what he allegedly sees as mixed messaging, criticizing the royal family while profiting from its proximity, and that frustration has allegedly translated into a hardline approach on money, particularly as he prepares for a future where public scrutiny of royal spending is only going to intensify, especially in a cost-of-living crisis where taxpayers are increasingly questioning why royals should be funded at all. And this context matters deeply, because any financial decision involving Harry is no longer just about family, it is about optics, accountability, and survival, and insiders suggest William understands that once he becomes king, every pound spent will be dissected, every allowance questioned, and any perceived favoritism towards a brother who openly criticizes the institution could become a political and public relations disaster. And so the alleged cash war may not be fueled by spite but by calculation, by a belief that boundaries, once blurred, must be redrawn sharply, even if it causes permanent damage to personal relationships. And yet, for Harry, this feels like abandonment layered on top of betrayal, Because in his mind, family should come before institution, compassion before protocol, and the idea that his own brother might cut financial ties feels like confirmation of what he has long feared, that once he stepped out of line, he ceased to matter within the system. And royal experts point out that money has always been a pressure point between the brothers, long before Meghan entered the picture, with Harry often chafing against hierarchical control while William embraced it, and that fundamental difference has only widened with time, especially as William settles into the role of statesman-in-waiting while Harry continues to position himself as an outsider, a truth-teller, and a disruptor, roles that may win sympathy abroad but deeply unsettle the palace. And when reports surface suggesting William may be locking down royal finances, restricting access, or redefining funding rules, they resonate not because of their shock value but because they align with everything we know about the brothers' diverging paths, and whether or not there is an official cash war, the reality is that money has become the final battlefield where unresolved emotional conflict meets institutional necessity, and the tragedy of it all is that once money enters the equation, reconciliation becomes harder, not easier, because financial decisions feel final, impersonal, and symbolic, and as one royal analyst put it, you can survive harsh words, but you rarely survive being cut off, and so as the world watches from the outside, speculating about allowances, security costs, and inheritance structures, the deeper story may be far more human. Two brothers who once walked behind their mother's coffin now standing on opposite sides of a divide shaped by grief, duty, resentment, and incompatible visions of what the monarchy should be, and if this truly is a cash war, then it is not about greed or punishment, but about a monarchy fighting to define itself in a modern world, with Prince William choosing control and containment, and Prince Harry choosing freedom and confrontation, and in that clash, money is simply the weapon that hurts the most. And yet, what makes this alleged cash war even more unsettling is that it may not end with Prince Harry alone, because once financial lines are redrawn, they tend to reshape the entire ecosystem around them, and royal insiders suggest that William's thinking goes far beyond his brother, extending to how the monarchy will survive in a world where every royal expense is scrutinized, criticized, and politicized, and in that world, sentimentality is a luxury a future king may feel he cannot afford. Especially when he has watched public opinion swing violently against the monarchy whenever it appears indulgent, unaccountable, or emotionally driven, and this is why some observers believe William sees Harry not just as a brother who left, but as a cautionary tale of what happens when personal grievances spill into public warfare that costs money, credibility, and institutional stability. And from William's perspective, every lawsuit Harry launches, every interview he gives, every documentary that reopens old wounds, creates ripples that the palace must quietly manage, often at great expense, both financial and reputational, and so the idea of tightening the purse strings becomes not retaliation but risk management, a way of signaling that the monarchy cannot be used as both shield and target at the same time, and yet, for Harry, this interpretation feels cold, even cruel, because he does not see himself as exploiting the institution but escaping it, and in his mind, the financial consequences are not fair boundaries but punishment for speaking uncomfortable truths, and this clash of perceptions is what makes reconciliation so elusive, because both men genuinely believe they are acting out of principle, not spite, and the silence between them grows heavier with each passing year, compounded by the reality that money decisions are rarely reversed once formalized, especially when they are wrapped in policy and protocol rather than emotion, and royal. Commentators have noted that even during moments when the family appeared close to reconciliation, funerals, coronations, fleeting public encounters, the underlying financial divide remained untouched, unresolved, like a fault line beneath the surface, and as William steps further into his role as the monarchy's public face, his tolerance for ambiguity appears to shrink, replaced by a preference for clarity, structure, and finality, qualities that may serve the crown well but leave little room for messy family healing, and some insiders fear that by the time William ascends the throne, the separation between the Sussexes and the royal financial system will be so complete that any notion of reintegration, even symbolic, will be impossible, turning what began as a personal rift into a permanent institutional exile, and yet, history shows that royal families have always used money as a means of control, from allowances to estates to access, and what we are witnessing now may simply be the modern version of an ancient strategy, one adapted to a global media age where financial independence is both celebrated and weaponized. And the irony is that Harry's pursuit of freedom through financial self-sufficiency may have inadvertently strengthened William's resolve to enforce boundaries, because independence, once claimed, cannot coexist with entitlement. And this philosophical divide may be the true heart of the conflict, more than any single report or headline, and as long as Harry continues to define his identity in opposition to the institution, and William continues to define his duty as the preservation of that institution, money will remain the sharpest point of contact between them, not because either brother is obsessed with wealth, but because wealth inside the monarchy represents legitimacy, belonging, and power, and whoever controls it ultimately controls the narrative of who is in and who is out, and so the question is no longer whether there is a cash war, but whether there is any path left that does not end in permanent estrangement, because once finances harden into policy, and policy hardens into precedent, even blood ties struggle to break through, and in that sense, the tragedy of William and Harry's story is not just that two brothers fell out, but that the very system they were born into may have made that fallout inevitable, leaving behind a silence louder than any interview, and a divide deeper than any headline.